Welcome to Showbiz Fix Uncut, sponsored by Sun Bingo, where we unpack the biggest entertainment stories with the journalists that know all the juicy details. I'm Felicity Cross, The Sun's deputy TV editor, and today we're talking about one of the most controversial men in music, Matty Healy. From onstage antics to breaking Taylor Swift's heart, Matty has ruffled more than a few feathers during his time in the spotlight. To help me unpack the man Swifties love to hate, I am joined by The Sun's associate bizarre editor, Hal Davies.
Hello.
Hello. Let's face the elephant in the room here. Matty has famous parents. I can't believe it took someone that has famous parents 10 years to make it.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting. So Denise Welch is his mum and Tim Healy is his dad.
Yeah.
So, you know, they're big actors in the UK, on TV in the UK.
Actors, Loose Women, Hun.
Yeah.
Many strings to that bow.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, they were well known, but to be fair to them, they kept their kids out of the spotlight when they were growing up. You know, it wasn't, you know, Matty Healy isn't a Brooklyn Beckham, but they were very conscious of not being known as the, you know, kids of famous people. And I actually have first-hand experience of this because I interviewed Matty in 2013, I think.
Okay.
At the Great Escape Festival in Brighton. And, you know, we sat down in this hotel cafe where, like, sort of no one really knew who he was, but we were there just having a cup of tea and talking. And I think, you know, he was having a good time at the time. He was riding the wave. And we did this chat. And then I published my piece. And the PR swiftly came on to me and said, please, I'd really appreciate it. Can you remove the mention that he's Denise Welch's son? Because we don't want him to be known for that. And I do think that's very interesting now because you do have a lot of people who sort of trade on their parents' names in some ways. And, you know, from a very early part of his career, he was making it clear that he did not want to be known just for his parents. He wanted to prove himself off his own merit.
Yeah, hell no to the Nepo.
Yeah, exactly.
But look, Matty was always the big superstar of the 1975, even from those early days. I remember when I saw them, I was like, this guy's got star power. So fast forward from that Glastonbury, then they really peaked 2015, 2016, didn't they?
Yeah, so in 2016, they released their second album, which, this is the title, I Like It When You Sleep, For You Are So Beautiful, Yet So Unaware of It, which is the longest running title to ever be a number one in the UK and the US. I mean, to go to number one on the Billboard 200 with your second album is absolutely amazing. Like, that just doesn't really happen for UK bands especially. And it was really impressive. I mean, it really turns them into household names around the world. You know, he wasn't just famous in the UK amongst like some indie pop fans. This was like proper stardom. And also, you know, he'd really proved himself from being away from his parents. He was actually way more famous than Denise and Tim had ever been. You know, they were only ever really known in the UK. So it was properly impressive that they had this, you know, huge boom around the world.
And he like was really leaning into that bad boy persona, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he was sort of every rock star trope that you could think of. He was living up to it. You know, he was acting pretty erratically on stage. I think we can say he was swearing a lot. He was being, you know, a proper rock star. And I think it's sort of what he thought that he needed to be. But he has a lot of charisma, and I think people warmed to him, but also in some ways love to hate him because he was sort of this controversial figure with like his swagger, and that's kind of continued ever since.
Yeah, I just always remember thinking that his jumpers always had holes in them.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's like the indie sleaze thing, isn't it? You know, it's like you want to kind of look like you've just rolled out of bed in the morning and turned up. You've maybe slept in the dog's basket. It was kind of his look, you know, the messy hair, looking like you've not really slept.
Which is why it was so wild when in February 2015, he was linked to Taylor Swift, the opposite of dog basket living.
Right. And, you know, this is at a point where, you know, Taylor Swift's not really long done 1989, which is this her big pop moment. Really the complete opposite of what he stands for. She was this like gorgeous, all-American, polished pop girl singing Shake It Off. And then suddenly you have her connected to Matty Healy and you're like, what? This makes no sense. And, you know, Taylor had dated British guys in the past. She'd been with Harry Styles not that long before that. And so when these rumors started to emerge that they were an item, everyone was a bit confused. But it was kind of really exciting because Matty Healy was still kind of like, it felt like just this British guy who'd just become famous. So for him to be dating one of the world's biggest pop stars. It was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And they never really addressed it. This is still the thing, that it's all kind of a bit of a mystery still. It was like, okay, did they ever really become super serious? They were seen together a couple of times and there was like rumors that they were together. I think we can now safely say that they did date for some period of time.
Yeah.
But it fizzled out, or it didn't really make it all the way.
I remember as a Swiftie being cross with him though, because didn't he say something like it would be emasculating to date Taylor because she was so famous?
Yeah. So in 2015, he said there was no relationship, there was nothing going on. And I assume that was at the point where, things had already ended. And the following year, he said, it would be emasculating for a man like me to date someone who's as famous and powerful as Taylor Swift. And he did get backlash for that. And I think rightly so, because what a strange thing to say.
Sorry about your tiny ego, Matty Healy. So then we've got from 2014, the rumours start swirling. 2015, he's denying it happened. 2016, he's slagging her off. And then he starts dating someone new.
Yeah. But then after that ended, he moved on with Gabriella Brooks, who's this absolutely beautiful Australian model. They were then very low key. I think he sort of realized like, oh, if you really give any hint that you're together, then people are going to run with it. Like what happened with Taylor Swift. People were obsessed with it straight away. So when he started dating Gabriella, he kept it quite low key. They weren't really out together much. They didn't go to events together. And they were together for 2 years until they started going to stuff together. So I think it was the Brit Awards in 2017 where they first sort of like made a public appearance together. And I think she was like a good influence. She was quite a grounding influence to him to some degree. But this was at a time when the 1975 are touring around the world. They are booked and busy. They are everywhere all at once. And so I think trying to keep Matty on planet Earth was probably quite a tough ask.
She was his keeper.
She tried her best. I think they had a really sweet relationship, but if you're a rock star in your 20s, it's never going to be easy to hold down a relationship. And I think it was quite a rocky road with them. They officially split up in 2019, after almost 4 years together. It was quite a good innings. But I think it got to a point where the schedule was just so hard because he was never home. And also, he was living like a rock star. He was doing everything he could to be the rock star that he wanted to be. I think that's, as I say, hard to live with if you are the girlfriend of that person.
Yeah, definitely. So then he moved on to another pop star.
Yeah. I mean, who'd have thought that to go from Taylor Swift to Gabriella Brooks to FKA Twigs, this was really a surprise to me. I guess, in some ways they move in similar circles. They're both sort of in this slightly left field music, field. And they got together and it seemed to become serious pretty quickly. They lived together during the COVID lockdowns. They were often seen out together in like East London during, your like little coronavirus walk. You'd see them out and about.
The coffee.
Yeah, with a coffee.
Yeah.
And, it was a really hard time for FKA Twigs because she was, really going through it. She was in court with her ex Shia LaBeouf, with a lot of accusations going on there and allegations. And Matty was really like her anchor at that point, stood by her and really supported her. And I think, it was Matty entering a different time of his life because the COVID lockdowns meant you couldn't tour, you weren't out and about, you actually just had to stay in one place for a while. So I think he sort of really calmed down at that time, did a lot of growing up, and she was, I think, fairly instrumental to that. But that wasn't to last either, unfortunately.
No.
They were together for 2 years. They had quite a long and happy relationship, it seems. Yeah. But I think that was it, There was a lot of celebrity couples seem to have this, that you really bonded during lockdown when you had this completely different lifestyle. You were together, you were alone, you didn't have those outside influences.
Yeah.
But after 2 years together, it became clear that both of them were back on the road. They were barely seeing each other.
Yeah.
And, life took its course and they split up.
Yeah. Welcome back, toilet roll, freedom, and goodbye that relationship.
Unfortunately so.
But hello again to Taylor Swift.
I mean, gosh, who would have thought it, really? At this point, the 1975 had been, very productive. They'd done quite a few albums, and Matty had been known for singing about his love life on his records. And who else does that? Taylor Swift.
Of course, famously.
Maybe not quite so in your face about it, but they both were known for doing that at that point.
Yeah. So Clemmy broke this news May 2023, big front page that Taylor and Matty were dating.
Yeah, and it was a massive shock because Taylor had this very steady long-term relationship with Joe Alwyn, another Brit, for a long time at this point. Rumours had started to swirl that they'd broken up, but neither of them had addressed it. So no one really quite knew what was going on. The Eras tour had just started like a month before, and she was busy on the road. You'd think that she'd have no time for anyone else, but suddenly this story drops. Clemmy drops this incredible exclusive front page story that Matty and Taylor are together.
Our assistant editor, Clemmy Moody, of course. We first name her like she's Madonna.
We do indeed. But it was a big shock. Like the fans around the world were like, sorry, what?
Yeah.
Like it really made no sense to anyone, especially given that they'd been in completely different countries. They were both touring, they were both busy. And so this story drops, and then just a few days later, he flies to Nashville and is in the audience for 3 different Eras tour shows, which is basically them holding their hands up and saying, yeah, this is completely true. This is actually happening.
Yeah. Well, us Swifties obviously immediately remembered the fact that they dated way back when. So for us, it was all a big told you so moment because, everyone was denying it back then. And we were like, well, look, they've reconnected. We knew.
I mean, in some ways, it did look a bit like a rebound situation because it was like, they'd both gone through splits and suddenly they were back together, especially Taylor, who'd only just broken up with Joe Alwyn at this point. But, he went out to these shows. He was pictured with Lily Aldridge and Gigi Hadid, 2 of her best friends, as you just saw in that picture. And, fans were divided, though. Fans were like, I'm not sure what's going on here. It was, I think, hard for them to process. But, he went to these shows and during one of these shows, there was a very famous moment that went completely viral where Taylor whispered into the camera, like, people worked out what she was saying. She said, this is about you. You know who you are. I love you. And then fans put it together. The Easter eggs are there that Matty had said this a few weeks earlier at a concert in the Philippines. So it was like, oh my God, this is a Taylor Swift Easter egg.
Yeah.
These 2 are confirming that they're together.
Yeah.
And everyone was kind of shook.
Well, what I thought was really interesting about this, again with my Swiftie hat on, is she did this just before Cardigan, which was a song that everyone thought was about Joe. It was the album that everyone thought was about Joe. And it was like, no, she's writing songs about Matty Healy. And so how long has she had these feelings for him? Has the relationship been going on this long, or is it just these feelings for him never left?
I think that can sometimes be the thing, right? You date someone maybe for a short period of time and you think, what could have happened? And I think maybe that was the thing with Matty for Taylor, is that he was the guy who was like, oh, you're the one that got away, who I never really maybe explored things with because we were both so busy.
Yeah.
And I think, they really, mostly lost contact in the almost 10 years between them dating. And I think, she really wanted to just explore that once more. And so after these Eras tour shows that they were together at, they were also seen leaving a recording studio in New York, which obviously A, basically said we're an item, and B, said maybe we're working together too. And at this point, Taylor was so prolific. She was putting out so many records that people were like, wow, she's back in the studio already. She's working on another record while on tour at the same time. People were super excited, but were also excited about the prospect of them recording together. I mean, like, this could be the first time Taylor's done a love song with both of them on the track where they're singing together, She'd actually written songs with Joe Alwyn when they were together, but he hadn't been, singing. Imagine a duet with Taylor Swift and Matty Healy singing about how much they love each other. It would have been wild. So the rumors swirled about that, and people were like, they were falling for each other even harder. There was, suggestions that they might move in together. It was all happening so quickly. It was really 0 to 100. But then it suddenly seemed to end. I think they were both super busy. And by June 2023, just a month later, I think about 6 weeks later, it had all ended. The story came out, they'd split up, it was all over. And people were kind of shocked, I think, because, this had all played out in front of the cameras very, very publicly. But it was almost as quick as the first relationship they had. It had all ended. It was only afterwards, on the Tortured Poets Department album, which it then turned out Taylor was recording at that time, that the suggestions came out. The lyrics have been read into since, and Taylor basically says, he ghosted me. You know, I was really into him, he ghosted me. And that was kind of devastating. And on one song, you know, at the time when they split up, people sort of said, oh, you know, it was amicable or whatever. But when this album came out a year later, you know, there's these lyrics saying that Taylor's calling him the smallest man who ever lived.
Yeah.
So it was pretty brutal.
Like Taylor, never mind Easter eggs, she unpacked the whole Easter egg factory because there was no hidden meanings here. It was all out there. My favourite was her referencing the Black Dog in Vauxhall, the pub, where he'd said he was somewhere else, but she'd seen on his iPhone location that he was at the Black Dog. And it was just, I felt like we were all invited inside this breakup because it was intense, wasn't it?
And it was shocking given that she dated Joe Alwyn for like 6 years before that.
Yeah.
And then she dated Matty for like 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And all the lyrics on this album were mostly about Matty. There was hardly any touching on Joe Alwyn. So you could tell that this, you know, this short-lived relationship really hurt her bad. And she took a lot of inspiration from it. I mean, even in the Fortnite video, she wore this white coat, which is exactly the same one that Matty had been wearing on stage in this photo in June 2023, just as they'd broken up.
Yeah, and so, she rewrote whole sections of the Eras tour, didn't she, to put the Tortured Poets in there, and there was dance moves that mimicked things that he used to do, and oh, what a time.
I think she also probably wanted to play on the fact that, you know, in 2016 he'd said dating Taylor would be emasculating. I think she thought, now you're going to find out what emasculating is. I'm going to do that to you.
Yeah.
I think she really wanted to get her own back there because she felt wronged by him both then and when they'd split up.
Well, it was a breakup 10 years in the making, wasn't it, in a way? So no wonder she felt so bad.
Yeah.
Okay, so, but there was another woman who has been there for Matty throughout all of this that isn't Denise Welch, Charli XCX.
Yeah, so Charli XCX started dating George Daniel, who's the drummer in the 1975, you know, one of Matty's best friends. So Charli became friends with Matty. I think they'd sort of known each other a bit before that anyway. You know, they move in similar circles. They're both in pop music. They're both from the UK. They became good friends because she was spending so much time with them. She would often go and join them at their gigs and stuff. She'd hang out with them backstage. She got to know Matty really well. And, you know, in 2024, she said that he's a bit like a brother to her, a brother that she sometimes wants to strangle, which, you know, you could understand. I think Matty gives off that vibe, doesn't he, a little bit? That sometimes you might want to strangle him.
Yeah.
But they definitely have a good friendship. And, you know, Matty was at their wedding when they tied the knot in Sicily. And it was all, you know, very nice. But then obviously Charli ended up getting involved in the whole Taylor Matty saga with her song Sympathy is a Knife on her Brat album. You know, Brat was the album that really propelled Charli XCX to this whole new career. And Sympathy is a Knife was written about this sort of rivalry and jealousy with other pop stars. Specifically, if you read into the lyrics, it seems very obvious that it's about Taylor Swift. Charli had actually supported Taylor on her tour, so they knew each other, but then she sang these lyrics, you know, on Sympathy is a Knife, and she said, "Don't want to see you backstage at my boyfriend's shows. Fingers crossed behind my back. I hope they break up quick," which was obviously a reference to the fact that she was going to these shows with George, and then Taylor might have been at a 1975 show. Charli's saying, "I don't want to see Taylor backstage at these shows." And the lyrics then went on to be saying, you know, I'm comparing myself to you. I can never compete with you. You're kind of superior in the pop landscape. How can I compete?
Yeah.
But this song was really read into. And I think Taylor took it as a real slight against it, probably because of Charli's friendship with Matty. And it led then in 2025 to Taylor's song Actually Romantic, where she really hit back. And the lyrics were really brutal because she basically accused Charli of being like this obsessive fan who's in love with her. And, you know, she used the lyric in there, high-fived my ex, and you said you're glad he ghosted me, which obviously is a reference to Matty because she said on Tortured Poets that he'd ghosted her. So it became this really messy saga, which interestingly, you know, never played out in interviews. No one really spoke about each other publicly, but you're trading these disses in these songs, which are all really brutal.
I love a diss track. It's just so messy.
And now I think, it's going to be interesting to see how that progresses. Charli's got an album coming out. There's going to be new 1975 music at some point. There's going to be new Taylor music. Is it going to carry on?
I
hope so.
Matty's now very, very happy with Gabbriette. They first met in December 2023.
Matty and Gabbriette got together, and actually the fun connection is that Gabbriette is actually really good friends with Charli, and they knew each other first. So Gabbriette and Charli got to know each other really well on this Netflix show that Charli made, where Charli put together a band called Nasty Cherry, and Gabbriette was in this band. Charli was sort of there helping them make it in music. She got them a record deal, and the whole point was that this was going to be this group that Charli set up and helped make a big deal out of. The band didn't really last very long. The show is entertaining if anyone wants to go back and watch it. But eventually, Gabbriette and Matty Healy got to know each other, and it was this nice connection because then they had this friends group.
I love that Charli was like, not that one, have this one.
Yeah.
Try this one.
I think she's definitely more approved by Charli than Taylor Swift.
Well, it makes a lot more sense, right? Gabbriette is cool, she's edgy, she's a model, she lives in New York. It makes a lot more sense.
They do fit a lot more perfectly, I think. It makes a lot more sense for him to be dating Gabbriette. But
fans love it.
Fans love it. They're sort of this edgy wild card couple who will also always be doing weird stuff. Gabbriette has a pet rat, and you're like, yeah, that makes sense for Matty to be dating a girl with a pet rat,
Because they can nibble the holes in all his jumpers for him.
Yeah, there we go. Perfect timing.
Yeah.
And actually, the funny thing about Gabbriette and Matty getting together in 2023, just after his split from Taylor Swift, is it's almost exactly the same time, almost to the week, that Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce get together. Then, fast forward 3 years, they're getting married 2 weeks apart. So it's kind of, I think, racing each other down the aisle in some ways. I think there's still a competitiveness between Taylor and Matty.
I like it. Just keep it moving. So why do you think that Gabbriette, that relationship has worked where the one with Taylor didn't?
I think Matty doesn't cope well with being that much in the spotlight. I think it would be hard for anyone to be with someone as famous as Taylor Swift, which is why I think her relationship with Travis Kelce works, because he's super famous anyway. In a different way, I think, from Matty, because Matty has always been quite a private person, whereas Travis Kelce has a podcast talking about his life, and he's on the sports field, and I think it's a kind of different thing, Gabbriette is, she's famous in her own right, but in a different way. They live their life mostly out of the spotlight, and I think they can have a relatively normal life when they want to be, having, just like regular dates or going to a bar. They can sort of do that without the whole circus that surrounds someone as famous and chart successful as Taylor Swift.
Do you think that comment though about dating someone so famous is emasculating, is illuminating here? Does Matty just like being the more famous one?
Ooh, I mean,
we can make that a rhetorical question if you want, Al.
I'm not even sure whether it's being the most famous one, but I think it's about not inviting any more fame into your life, because I think it's clear that he does like his privacy, and he realizes that actually dating someone who's more famous than him is only gonna put more eyes on him.
Yeah, he should ease off with the performative statements on stage then.
Well, maybe that's it.
In recent years, it feels like Matty's calmed down. So let's talk about Matty now.
Yeah, I mean, so I think part of it is that we've actually not really seen that much from Matty in the last year. So the last 1975 show was at Glastonbury. They headlined Glastonbury in 2025. Went down really well, had really good reviews. And then he's sort of taken a step back. The 1975 have been working on new music. They've sort of said that there might be 2 albums coming out, but they've been quite quiet on that. And of course, Matty's just got married. They tied the knot with a wedding that obviously Denise Welch and everyone else was at. All of their friends and family flew to the US to be at their wedding. And now talk is obviously turning to what's next for the 1975. George Daniel's been making music as a solo artist as well as being in 1975. I think there's, definitely some speculation that Matty might do some solo music at some point. That remains to be seen. But it does definitely look like it's not going to be too long before the 1975 are back with new music. They've had this break. They've had some time off. They've been in the studio. And I think it's not going to be too long until Matty is up to his old antics again.
with his pet rat there available for any jumper holes required.
You'd hope so.
That's your dose of Showbiz Fix Uncut for this week, brought to you by Sun Bingo. Remember to subscribe to us here on the Sun Showbiz YouTube channel for all the inside TV and celebrity gossip. See you next week.